this week's episode, we speak to Jaki Hannan, an integrated producer at Adam and Eve DDB who has founded Equal Lens. We talk about why representation is important, the benefits of diversity, and what we can do to play our bit to help create a level playing field. So sit back and really hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, how are you doing, Tom? You surviving lockdown still?
Yeah, doing all right, man. Doing all right. What about you?
I am getting on all right. Yes, just keeping myself busy with non-essential tasks.
Yeah, I have, speaking of non-essential tasks, I have basically managed to repack my every bit of gear I own now packs down into 3 bags. That's how efficient I've been in lockdown.
3-bag barns. That's what
3-bag barns. That's what they call me. But yeah, no, it's been, don't know. It's been, feels like things are starting to maybe think about get going again. So yes. I'm kind of feel hopefully that I've become quite efficient through lockdown. So now I'm kind of ready to kind of get back to it.
Obviously, the danger of recording a podcast is that by the time this goes out, the world might have ended.
That is a good point.
It might be a distant memory.
If the world has ended and you're listening after the apocalypse, really sorry we didn't get to put this out. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Well, hopefully the world hasn't ended. We're all super busy and we're all millionaires. So
yes. And hopefully, people have been catching up on the podcast and enjoying what they've been listening to. This week's is really excited about. We're super keen, really, for you guys who are listening to get in touch and to kind of have discussions. And I think this week's will probably provoke some debate and discussion and some questions. Mm-hmm. And so, if people want to, I think probably the easiest way, the best platform for that is over on our Instagram. You know, we've had people DMing us, but, you know, feel free to leave questions in the comments for the posts that we put up, or DM us or email us.
That's it. We read each one and slide into our DMs. Let us know.
Yeah. Stay in touch, get in touch, and let's have some discussions and let's hear what you guys want to be, you know, hearing about from us.
This is it, right? Like we started this podcast to, obviously I just wanted to have a weekly catch up with Greg and he was trying to ignore me. So I thought starting a podcast would force him to do it. And it's worked out really well. So definitely recommend starting a podcast, but we did really start this podcast to try and help. You know, it's a bit of a complex world really. And I know a lot of people are either self-taught or, you know, often doubt themselves, various things and things like that. So it's nice to be able to chat to like-minded folk. And if you've got any questions, you've got any kind of burning kind of things that you've always wanted to ask, but like felt a bit silly maybe about asking them, if you just want to send it to like us anonymously, we're not going to dox anyone. Like, It would just be nice to hear from you guys, really.
Yeah, topics of discussion, I think, because, you know, you're talking about kind of touching on imposter syndrome. I think, you know, something along those lines would be fascinating to talk about, something that we, you know, everyone who works in this industry faces to some degree. If you've got suggested guests that you think you'd like us to talk to, anybody you've seen recently producing interesting articles or got something interesting to say, then again, we're open to suggestions. They don't have to be based in the UK, obviously. We're a international audience and an international podcast, so weirdly, through the magic wizardry of pigeons, we're able to interview people on the other side of the world.
Those pigeons are quite tired because we've got some fans in Argentina, so thank you very much to everyone there who's joining in. If you can send our pigeons back. But yeah, just get in touch. There's like Greg said on the Instagram, which is at xnegative, or over on the email, which is info@exposednegative.com. But today's chat is going to be an interesting one. So I think if you're happy, we should get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
On today's podcast, our guest is Jaki Hannan from Adam and Eve DB, who is an integrated producer, but more importantly, or well, not more importantly, as Equal, runs Equal Lens, which we would obviously love to hear more about. So Jaki, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good. How are you two doing?
We're doing all right. Thank you very much for giving up your afternoon and coming to chat to me and Greg. We really appreciate it.
No, I'm very happy to be here.
So would you like to kind of introduce yourself properly? I did a very bad job. If you want to introduce yourself properly and kind of a bit about your role and obviously Equal Lens, really, just going to give our listeners a bit more information about it.
Yeah, sure. So at Adam and Eve, I'm an integrated producer. So there I commission photography, directors, artists, illustrators, animators, and so on, and work across the whole production process, which is an absolute dream job and really exciting to be part of that creative process and, be in the core of advertising and, in such an incredible agency. And then alongside that, in my out of office times and sometimes in office times, I am the founder of Equal Lens, which is a non-profit that's championing the work of women and non-binary photographers in the commercial world so that, photography and commercial photography can really reflect the world that we live in.
Amazing. I think me and Greg are speaking as two quite privileged white men in photography. We are very, very keen to make this podcast as inclusive as possible. So thank you very much for coming on and talking to us about it. We really appreciate it. So why did you feel, well, I mean, I probably just answered the question myself, but
answered your own question.
Why did you feel, I mean, obviously it's fairly obvious, but why did you feel the need to start Equal Lens?
Do you know what? I absolutely adore working with all photographers, and I adore working with many, many male photographers. But what sort of occurred to me over my I've been in the industry for about a decade now, is that time and time again, I was mainly just working with male photographers. And I think as a woman, I feel like the lens of photography and advertising should be shown from all perspectives. And for me, it's not about that I don't love the men I work with. It's about that it needs to be shared fairly. And also, I think that advertising has a lot of budget, and that budget can then be given to those photographers for them to go do their passion projects, whether that's editorial work or personal projects. So that pie also needs to be sort of shared around. And when I was sort of starting to think about this, I had no voice to say it out loud. So time and time again, I would just, see just male photographers winning all the bids. I would see just male photographers winning all the photography awards. And I would see many male assistants and crew members. And I really didn't say anything. And then I went on this scheme called See It, Be It, which is with Cannes Lion. And that was all about future female leaders. And in my submission to Cannes Lion, I talked about that I wanted to see change in commercial photography because that's the main thing that I commission. I really wanted to see more equality because I knew that women is such a huge minority group that then other minority groups, if women is the biggest, then and they're not being represented, then how about all those other minority groups? Mm-hmm. In particular, non-binaries, there is really no one that's been championing them. So that was also really important for me. And I looked at I wanted some statistics and I looked for them, but I couldn't find any. And I remember chatting to the AOP, do you have any statistics about, how many male to female photographers there are and so on? And there wasn't anything that sort of existed at that point. So me and my teammates on Equal Lens, we scoured about 75 photographer agents last year. And we came up with a statistic from what we viewed on everybody's websites that less than 25% of those represented was women.
Wow. That's not a lot.
And why do you think, I mean, it obviously the bonus of what you're saying about kind of we need this shared vision, shared perspectives, and that's where photography gets its strength, is it needs to have that diversity, and at the moment it clearly doesn't have that, and it's incredibly apparent, especially with the issues which are currently kind of playing out in the States and over here, is there's a huge way to go before there's actual proper representation in photography. And I think some people don't understand why that is so important, in the sense that they don't really get that photography is a medium of language. And if you're cutting people out from actually speaking and having a say, and saying what they want to say, then you're missing so much richness in terms of content and ideas and everything that goes with that. I'm interested in what did you find when you looked into it in terms of why there was this kind of discrepancy? Is there anything that you feel like, when you look at kind of the situation in other industries, there's also obviously other industries have issues too. And if you say, look at women in the corporate world, and why the imbalance is there. Is there anything that kind of tallies up and that carries across similar kind of issues that are at play here?
Wow, so many questions there, but really, really good thoughts. Thank you. I'd say from a sort of diversity and inclusion perspective, we need to see, we can't just have an all white crew, all white agency. And if you have everybody looking the same, then you're going to miss things because there's different cultures and different ways of looking at things. And if you don't have all perspectives, then something will get made that isn't fully representative of the UK and the world. And that's why it's really important, not just about the photographer, but also about their crew and also about the agency and who writes the ideas, the planners. Basically, the whole machine needs to look different. It can't all look the same or else we're going to have the same ideas. So that's, I think, one part of your question. And then in terms of, women in particular, I think that obviously, for a long time, women took different roles in the family life. And then as time has come on, due to, the way, women have been championed through the years, we're rising up, through the ranks and also, being in leadership. And, it's going to take a little while for that to sort of even out. And I think that, that scheme, the Can Lion, See It Be It, was, created to try and level out some of that level playing field so that we can get more women into leadership, because we can't just be expected to step in. That scheme was created with mentors and guidance and, so then you don't go in and sort of fall, but you can go in and feel supported to succeed. And I think that, it's really fantastic to talk about all this stuff, but then you have to have the infrastructure to really get those people there. And I think that can start from a grassroots level. We can all, that's why I like hiring and, bringing everyone up through the roots so they can sort of, learn all the skills we need to have. Then that's going to make it a lot much more easier of a process.
I guess what's interesting in that is that everybody who is currently involved in photography has a role to play in helping to change these attitudes, and also can actually take proactive action, like you said, in terms of photographers and their personal crew that they bring on shoots.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, because I think quite often people see and hear these things and they discuss them and they want to help, but they don't, or they want to be part of the change. They want to understand it, but they don't always know or don't always think about what their role can be and what difference they can make personally. So it's quite interesting to hear that, because that is something that, we as photographers can all work with. Is there any other things that you think photographers can do to help change attitudes within the industry? I
think, in terms of, your, when you are finding your crew, think about, hiring from different places, or look at, there's an initiative called the Color Balance, which is all about getting more people of color assisting photographers. And, if you don't know someone, ask for help. And I think that's really important, that ego reduction. If you can see that something's not right on your crew, then ask someone else, because there are a lot of people, who can help and recommend. Talk to other agents, talk to producers, talk to me. And I think in terms of representation, I guess that, because a lot of male photographers potentially started out in this industry, and so a lot of them are represented, understandably, because they're fantastic. And it's just about, where do we find the place for the people who are up and coming, and a lot of the women photographers, how do we get them on photographers photographer's representation.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, I always ask agents, and I'm like, something I'm really passionate about is how can we get 50-50, on your website? How can I help? It's not about me judging you, but I'm going to point it out. If I see that you have 10 male photographers, I'm going to say, hey, where's the women? Or if I see you have 10 male white photographers, I'm going to say, okay, let's take a look at that. And it's not that I'm trying to put those photographers down. I'm just saying that, we got to keep moving, with the times, and inclusion is a really important part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the point that you're not trying to put people down is an important one, because I think there'll be a lot of people who feel threatened being white and male. They'd be like, oh my God, we're going to lose all this work. But that's not the case. There's so much work to go around that just, minorities and kind of the female contingent need more of that fair share.
And I think it's also about that unconscious bias. Like, I was chatting to someone earlier, and sometimes women or people of color can get quite gender stereotyped or race stereotyped into certain types of jobs, where certain male photographers, for some reason, they can do everything, but a woman can only do that type of brief, or, a person of color can do this type of brief. And I think that's another thing. Everyone needs to look at their own unconscious bias and realize that actually commissioning differently that might go against your normal grain might get you actually a better result.
A different viewpoint.
Well, ideally, photography, in an ideal world, photography would be almost done blind, in a sense of like, it doesn't matter who the photographer was or where they're coming from. But of course, that in itself plays a part in the type of work they create, the unconscious bias that they're bringing to the job, and the way that they represent a situation or a scene based on their kind of education, upbringing, cultural background, etc. In a utopian world, it'd be lovely to just be able to judge the work for itself, but of course it always has context. So it's a really interesting area to kind of navigate.
And I think it's also about like what you commission on. For me as a commissioner, what I look for is someone's grade. What is their visual look and feel? What kind of narrative are they saying in that? What kind of personal projects do they do? What are their true passions and interests? And then how can I commission them that will inspire them in a way or connect authentically, to their passion projects? And do I want to give that brand that look and feel? And for me, that's super, super important. It's not about what brand you've worked on or who you know or how long you've been in the industry. It's about your creativity and passions. But not everybody commissions in that way. Some people are like, well, show me your commissioned work. For me, I don't even want to look at people's commissioned work. I like editorial. I like personal work, and I usually like advertising with no branding on it, because I feel like that's more authentic to the person, and I feel like I've done a better job if I've matched someone, more authentically to a brief. Obviously, that's not always going to be the case because it doesn't work for every brand. But I think that's really important. I think that would sort of help, because sometimes, agents don't want to take on newer photographers or photographers who are very established if they don't have enough sort of client work. And I think that actually that shouldn't necessarily be a criteria. I get it totally, though, that it's a business, and I probably don't understand all of that goes into that side. But, in terms of, I try to do my part to not make it about that.
And in terms of kind of what Equal Lens, because in terms of kind of resources that people can go and look at, you mentioned color balance, and we will link to that in the show notes. But tell us a bit more about what Equal Lens does, and what you've got kind of coming up in the future that might be of interest to listeners.
Yeah, so our website, I'm going to be launching a new website in the next week or two, which is really exciting. It'll look the same to everyone else, but to me, it's different. And what Equal Lens has on it, it has over, I think, 250 women and non-binary photographers on there with representation, but obviously majority without. And it links to their website. It has 10 photos. It has, if they have representation, I'll have a link to that. It has their social media. the full site is searchable. And obviously, I come from a more traditional art buying background. So we've also categorized everybody into different categories. So if you're a producer or a client, or you're an agent looking for someone in a certain sort of category, and you want to look up fashion or beauty or reportage or lifestyle or gifts, I've sectioned everyone, into different sort of sections. So it's really easy to find that. And part of the new feature of the new website is that the sort of hero picture for each category will be personalized to that category, where on the site that's currently up now, it's just one hero image. So that's going to be a real help visually to people when they're searching. Also, this year for International Women's Day, we did a partnership with Adam and Eve and Campaign Magazine, which was to do She Takes Over, which is where about 30 plus agencies in the industry, media companies, advertising agencies, and so on, turned over their social media for a month to represent women and showcase their work, whether that was photographers, directors, women composers, and so on. And more recently, we just had our competition, 2 meters of separation, just come to a close, and we had loads and loads of entries. And it's really exciting. The winner will get a 2-page spread printed in Creative Review magazine, plus a fantastic Hannan camera.
Very nice.
Yeah, really, really awesome. And so we've got a fantastic lineup of judges, and it's going to be really great to see what they think about that. And then, go on.
Where will we be able to see the winners? When they're going to be announced on the website?
Yeah, the winners will be announced in July, early July, and they'll be on the website. They'll be on the Instagram at Equal Lens. They'll probably be on the Twitter. They'll be in Creative Review. We're also chatting to a few other publications about sort of sharing that. So watch that space, and please do congratulate our women or non-binary winners. And then the podcast.
This is the exciting thing, right? Having just started our own podcast, we just chatted off air. You've got your very own Equal Lens podcast starting up.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm hoping to launch that in the next week or two with a really very current sort of conversation about photography. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing that. And yeah, it's something I'll be hosting, but really it's going to be about the guests and the conversation that I have with them.
Excellent. And that's just going to be focusing on issues that the Equal Lens obviously support, or is it going to be kind of far reaching kind of in this world, or is it mainly focusing on Equal Lens related activity?
I think it'll be about both. It'll be about Equal Lens related things, but then I think also it's about exploring other minority groups, not just women and non-binary photographers. Cool. Because although that's who we champion on the website, I think it's really important, to support all minority groups. So I think we'll have discussions on that too.
Excellent.
And actually, to be honest, who you are, it'll probably be interesting to listen to anyway, because I'll be talking about sometimes, what it's like getting an agent or commissioning and, all different sorts of topics. So helpful to anyone.
You should join us as a co-host.
Yeah, I'm ready. Who's our first guest?
There we go. Job done. Greg, thanks for joining us.
And here we have Tom and Greg.
For obviously all the listeners, we record these and there does tend to be a bit of a delay. So you can probably find the Equal Lens podcast by searching it after you finish this episode, obviously. Yeah,
and we'll link obviously to the Instagram and everything else in the show notes. And on our Instagram, we'll link to that. So that'd be great. I think the next question we had really was to do with where you see photography. I mean, with everything that's going on, the discussions that are kind of going on at the moment, how do you see kind of photography changing? You're in a quite unique position because you're working commissioning, you're working deep in the advertising world, so you're seeing kind of trends change. You're in a great position to actually, see the change as it happens, rather than most photographers who kind of start to just sense the change rather than kind of being in the midst, seeing the meetings, hearing what's being discussed, etc. So how do you feel that photography is changing, and what's it going to look like in the future with regards to what we've been discussing? Do you have any kind of insights, or, I mean, I know this is a very vague question.
Yeah. I would say, what we talked about before in terms of make sure your crew is inclusive, because you need people who will call you out on your shit. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We swear like sailors.
Because sometimes we need to be like held accountable, and also we don't see our own unconscious bias, and you need to be surrounded by people who aren't afraid to have a voice. And as I said to you before, for so many years I didn't feel like I had a voice until I went to that initiative and I realized that actually telling you my opinion is okay. And I think having people around you that you work with on a daily basis that can give fresh insights and different opinions will keep you fresh. So I think that's really, really important. And also, when you do have assistants, that's like, the mega internship, or, being an assistant to a photographer can, what's it called when you go train, what's that word?
An apprenticeship. Or
there's another word for it.
Interning?
No, not interning.
Mentoring?
No, not mentoring. But all these words are good. It's like when you learn a skill like carpeting or something like that.
Yeah, it's apprenticeship.
Oh, maybe it is apprenticeship.
Yeah.
I think you win.
I think it's. I mean, I always just remember the government apprenticeship scheme, which obviously failed quite miserably. But yeah, that's. I think it is apprenticeship.
Yeah, and I think having an apprenticeship can really set somebody up, and you can really contribute to somebody's future. And I think, and anyone who wants to be an assistant, if you have to make tea 10 times a day, I had to do that. It's all part of the process, because while you're making tea, you're sponging all that information that's going on around you, whether it's learning technical abilities, whether it's learning how to talk to clients or how to interact with your agent or how to speak to your team. Even if you're not saying anything, you're still listening. And actually, as a photographer, thinking about how much that assisting is an opportunity, I think is really important, because you can absolutely change someone's life and career by giving them that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we always forget I think we always just end up getting so comfortable in our knowledge or kind of the way we work that we always forget that if you don't know it, you could just glean just huge amounts of knowledge just by coming on set just to assist. And I always forget how much, when you're starting out, how much people don't know. And, and most of it is kind of common sense, but you don't quite realize that until you've seen it maybe in action. I feel personally for me, I never did that. I never did have an apprenticeship. I never did kind of assist or do anything like that. And I do feel I missed out. So I think
I totally agreed. It would be amazing. And I know like Nadav Khanna, sometimes he has his assistants for I think 4 years, and he's produced some amazing photographers, like Felicity and Kate Peters and Sebastian Novel and so on. And forgive me if I've said everyone's names wrong, sorry. But they are incredible, very technical, amazing photographers. And, I know that he takes the training of his assistants really seriously, and you have to sort of, be with him for a few years. And I just think that is such an amazing opportunity. So really think about who you're giving that to. And I think that so often, and I think this happens across all industries, we get comfortable and we go for the easy option. So, I'll just go with that assistant because, they know how to do it. And maybe actually I should be encouraging that assistant now to do their own work and taking on that next generation. And even though that's going to be a bit painful for me because I have to retrain them, and that's not what I need on this stressful day, try and do it. People learn fast.
Some faster than others, but I think
faster than others.
But yeah, no, you're right. I think it does feel like we should all do our bit and we should all help. I think we always forget that assisting, yes, obviously they're getting paid for it and it's a job, right? But it is also helping them, training them, they're learning. I'd hope they'd be learning from me. I don't know how much they'd be learning, but
and it's that foot in the door.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. We've just chatted in the previous episode to an assistant who actually then shifted over full time to shooting, and so you always forget how it can be, the foot in the door can lead to just a full time amazing career. So yeah, I definitely think we should do that.
Yeah, and I also think it's for photographers. Sometimes it can be, the tricky thing is finding work for an assistant to do outside of the actual shoots. It takes a bit of time to kind of sit down, and I had that this summer. I was meant to have 2 female students from UWE that were coming to intern at the studio, and then COVID happened and everybody's plans went out the window. But it was actually quite interesting to sit down for myself and to think, well, if I did have somebody interning for a week, 2 weeks at a time to start with, what kind of work could I have them doing that's actually going to be interesting to them and entertaining and informative? Because I know that when I interned at magazines, I definitely spent days where I did not much and it felt like I was a nuisance.
But there's probably ways you can be, there's probably ways that we, as the people who are offering the internships, can be more sensible about that. If we spent the time to create a guide or recorded a video of us telling,
I think that's what you need to do.
And just basically go, right, look, just ahead of you coming to the studio to work for me for a couple of weeks, this is how I like things done. And so then they turn up having watched this 4-second video in my case, but like just a very short, just like this short film, right? And it gets people prepared. So then I think that takes the worry from the person offering the internship to then they know they're coming in a bit prepared and they've done it on their own time. So actually technically it's only taken you the time to prepare the video, which will probably save time in the long run. Because, you know, if you're going to have every kind of couple of months have another couple of people in, it saves you so much time just by doing that. And also having fresh eyes come in, like you said earlier, if they go, well, why do you do it like that? Wouldn't you do it like this? And you go, oh, damn, the process that I've been using the same way for the past 10 years, you're completely right. That does make much more sense. So I think there's definite ways we can make it easier on ourselves to offer it. But that's
Totally.
That brings me on to kind of an interesting point. What is it? What other than what we just talked about? What can we do to help get equal representation in the industry, other than kind of making sure our kind of crews and stuff are kind of as inclusive as possible?
I would say very open-ended question. On your internship bit that you were just saying, something that I do is when someone comes to intern at Adam and Eve, I sit down with them at the start and I explain to them what my job is. And then I ask them what they want to get out of the 2 weeks or the 1 week, and, you know, really hear what they have to say. And I find that that's really helpful in structuring, because we don't have to have all the answers. And actually, you know, by understanding someone's expectations, then we have more of a chance to meet them.
Right.
And it might be just something really simple, like quite often, you know, it might be just sitting down and going through someone's work with them, or explaining, you know, why I do something in my job. But yeah. And then in terms of your other question, let me have a think.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't really prepare you for that one.
No, it's really about people asking for it. I'm not sure you necessarily as a photographer can do it, besides what we've talked about in terms of the crew and the assistants, and obviously about championing, you know, women and non-binary and, you know, all minority group photographers, which you are both doing that.
I kind of feel like we're, as photographers, we are kind of slightly in a bit of a no man's land, because we can obviously we can make our crews more inclusive. We can be kind of more inclusive when offering internships and things like that, but we're not commissioning.
No.
So really it kind of comes down, and sorry to do this to agents and agencies, but it does come down a little bit on their shoulders.
And I can tell you all about that. What I think they should all do. In terms of photographers, the only other thing you could do is, you know, in terms of your casting, that making sure you're not having gender stereotypes, not putting people in the role that you would instantly think they should be in, but trying something a little bit different. and making sure that you're being inclusive within and authentic and not being tokenistic, which can be a really hard balance. And so that's, just about, keep sort of having that conversation with the people around you and challenge people. If something doesn't look right in your gut or something's nothing, then say it. And I think you guys, as the trusted photographers, you are leading that production. And if you say, this is my suggestion, myself on the agency side will put that forward, as long as my creatives are also in lines. But we're really entrusting you to have that vision. And that's why inclusivity on your side is super important. When it comes to the other side, in terms of why women are not represented, and what can we do to readdress that gender imbalance? It's that agents need to have 50-50 books. They need to be representing not just women, but minority groups. And if you feel like you can't have that on your main roster, why? What is the fear? And feel the fear and do it anyway, because really there shouldn't be any fear or any risk, because there is so much unrepresented, incredible talent out there that you would be lucky to have them on your books. When it comes to brands, you need to be asking for it. If you get a triple bid and, it's 3 white men, we don't always know what everyone looks like, then ask, say, where is that other opinion? Where is that other perspective? Because actually it's going to make your work better. And then from an agency perspective, as a producer, when I'm creating a list of, say, photographers for my creative directors to look through, I have a choice to make that list inclusive, whether that's 50-50 or so on. So like, say, for example, if I share a list of 10 photographers, I try to always do, 5 women and 5 men. And then within that, other minority groups. And sometimes that's going to take me more time, but I have to make the effort to do it. Whoever does the best treatment and is the best for the job will ultimately get the job. But if someone isn't there to even, put their foot into the whole mix, then they're missing out on an opportunity at every level. And so really it's, as we said before, that whole machine that needs to make a change and be asking for it and demanding it.
It's interesting that when we're talking about the machine, I don't know what about you, Greg, but for me, when I have gone in and met agencies and met agents, there does seem to be a fairer representation of women in those roles. It does feel to me like I probably meet maybe slightly more women in agencies who are commissioning and agents, for example. But then kind of obviously the buck stops with the end game, who is the photographers, which suddenly kind of feels weirdly like, I don't know, is there something?
There's a lot of women who don't put women on the list.
Right.
We cause our own problems. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Everybody, I have to do my part. And we all have to just sometimes take a step back and have some self-awareness, because sometimes you get into auto drive and you're just like, what's easy? I just want it to get done, less work. I've got family, I've got other stuff I need to look into.
Yeah.
Especially and sometimes being inclusive is an effort.
Yeah. No. I was just going to say, of course, that makes sense. People do kind of sometimes go with the easier option because they're so busy, because they're kind of, rammed working on 4 different projects at the same time. So it does make sense from just like from an efficiency or an ease of use kind of point of view. But I think that what's becoming apparent, especially to me, is that there just needs to be an extra bit of effort made just to make sure that, for example, we do the inclusive internships. The extra effort just needs to be made. Obviously, it's very hard to speak on someone else's point of view, but like the extra effort just to be made just to find that extra female photographer who needs to go in on that bid, for example, rather than just use the easy options.
Absolutely. And I think it's, it comes back to that thing, like a lot of people will think women can't shoot cars. Women don't like adventure. Women don't shoot sport. And, you sort of get pigeonholed. And so if you're going in with that unconscious attitude, then you're going to disqualify people immediately. And I was looking at this incredible car photographer who's a woman based in Germany, Alessandra Keeler.
Okay.
You guys can link her too. She has done some absolutely banging car photography recently. She does not just car photography, she does lots of other stuff. But, I love when we can break that unconscious bias, because for some reason people think men can shoot every single star, but women can't. And so part of what I like to do on our Instagram is put out imagery that breaks those unconscious bias, because if I can visually stimulate you really quickly, maybe it clicks through somebody's thinking, because we can't expect people just to automatically think differently, because these things are really ingrained deep in our social conditioning from such a young age.
Yeah.
So it's not about me giving someone a hard time for not thinking like this, but I have a choice to educate people, and I can do that on the Instagram or on the website or by talking to people. And that just comes back to our point of not shaming people. We're here to help each other so we can all grow to have a better world and a better advertising industry, and a more equal commercial photography world.
I mean, one example of when you're talking about the issues that women face on set in general, kind of prejudices and what have you. I was reading a really interesting article by Sophie Ebard, whose photography I absolutely love. I think she's got an amazing eye, and
beautiful.
She was on. She said she was pitching for a job, and she mentioned that she would be having to feed her. I think it was her son, breastfeeding her son, and she kind of, somebody within the agency decided it was too much of an issue, and it apparently made things too complicated. And it was really sad to kind of read that and to realize that that's something that I'm never probably going to come face to face with myself. And if I hadn't have read that, it would never have even crossed my mind that was something, that somebody might face, that kind of difficulty that somebody might face on set. And it's the little things like that, which, I mean, they're not little things, but they're these everyday prejudices and issues that I guess women in photography do face. And
I think it's about education. Because I think that if you are a newer producer and that was come to you, you might think, oh, I need a child license for that child because they're on set and they're under 16, and you might think it from a logistical rather than a moral perspective. Also, if she's going to get you the best creative results photography-wise, you should do whatever you can to make that shoot work with her. And I think, if you have someone with a baby on set, whether that's the talent, or a model or the photographer or the director, there's no reason why a schedule can't be worked out, to make it work for them. It happens on a lot of sets. You don't need a child license. I don't believe you need extra insurance. You just need to sort of schedule it and consider when that child needs to be fed and work that into it. And actually, it can be exciting and an opportunity for that producer to maybe do something different, so then they can make those opportunities for other people in the future, and then talk about it and then show that that's something that can be done and is respected. Motherhood is a beautiful thing, and so is being a powerful employed woman. And we should be able to do both at the same time. We shouldn't have to choose.
Sure. And the more producers who enable it, the more practiced they are, the more kind of happy they are when that request comes in the next time. They'll be like, oh yeah, no worries, it's no bother, it's no deal. We did it, with that shoot, it was fine, no problem at all.
And whether that's having a nanny on set and, allowing a little bit of additional budget to have a nanny to look after the baby while the mother's working, or the father, it could be on set, or whether it's another caretaker bringing the baby when they need to be fed to the set, just make time where it's not like, quite often on photography shoots, we're not recording sound. So... Yeah.
So the screaming doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Between setups or at lunch or what,
Exactly. I mean, I became a father 6 months ago today, and
congratulations.
Thank you very much. But feeds don't last. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't last as long as people think. I think people think when they talk about breastfeeding, they kind of make it into this huge, great thing that's going to take 4 hours, and you kind of go, well, actually, that's not the case. Yeah. I think it's just a level of just lack of understanding. really.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's always a solution, and just, ask that person what works for them. It's like, for example, with all the COVID remote shoots, no one really knew how to do many remote shoots. I've actually done one before, but most producers hadn't. And we had to work out what's the best way to do that by asking the photographers and working with them to find solutions. And This is the same thing. This is just part of the shoot. It shouldn't be anything that holds you back from getting a job. That's, obviously I don't, won't go into it, but it's outrageous.
Oh, no, yeah, don't worry. We agree.
So I guess my point was it's really interesting at this moment in time to be thinking about the future of photography in terms of representation, because photography is such a important means of communication. Seemingly, more now more than ever, we have society which is arguably more visually literate, using social media, using Instagram to communicate ideas, and we can see how powerfully a image can change public opinion. I mean, it always has, but now that idea can spread across the internet in seconds and in real time, really. It's obviously so much more important to have those different voices. So I think what you're doing with Equal Lens is we both do, is an absolutely fantastic and worthwhile cause, and something that we both obviously want to champion.
Absolutely.
Do you have any further thoughts, Tom?
No, I just kind of wonder, really, because normally what we do tend to ask is kind of, where do people see things going? I'd love to know if you see the situation improving. I feel that there does seem to be momentum. I do feel there does seem to be a feeling of wanting to change, and I'm kind of hoping that does obviously bring about the fair representation that I think we'd all like. But do you think this might be a longer drawn out process, or do you think it does feel, personally to me, it does feel like things are starting to change a little bit more rapidly now?
I think we are in that moment of change, and that momentum has already begun. And it's just about everyone doing their part and holding themselves accountable for their bit. And I think that, one thing I want to say is, if you're a young male photographer or an established male photographer, I'm also on your side. I'm on all sides of everyone. And, I just want to see the industry sort of, sharing everybody's perspectives. And I think just keep talking about it, being open, just say something, even if you think you're saying it wrong and you're challenging someone and you're worried about how they'll judge you or what you'll think about it, just say it anyway. You can always say sorry after.
Perfect. And that does seem like quite a nice spot to kind of start wrapping it up. We do a regular set of questions at the end that we ask every guest, because
let's do it.
We have robbed the section fully from Desert Island Wherever. Won't say the full title, but yeah, if you were stranded,
dot.
So what would be your desert island camera? Now, obviously, you're not a photographer, but I know you obviously like to travel a lot. So what would be the kind of the best camera for you?
So I would have to say my iPhone.
That's all right. You can say that.
Other phones
very
are available.
accessible. It backs up to the cloud as soon as I get on Wi-Fi. And recently I was in Antarctica and it took some great shots. I have to admit though, Dan Burn 40 lent me a 5D. Thank you so much. And I did get some cracking shots, but I had to get someone else to process them for me because I had no idea how to do it.
Yes. It's slightly more complicated than the iPhone, yeah. But no, that's cool. That's awesome.
It is. You guys, you do something, it is quite hard.
Wow. And then for a Desert Island book?
Yes. Now, I thought long and hard about this. And I thought, you know what? I really treasure memories and experiences. So I would actually go with my book called The Art of Burning Man. which is a collection of photographs from, I think, over 26 years of the Burning Man Festival, where I've been 6 times.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So if I'm going to be stranded alone, I might as well pretend I'm having a party.
Yep, fair
That's
enough.
amazing.
Fair enough.
Is that like an amalgamation of photographers, or is it one body of work, or is it?
I feel like there's definitely a photographer who might be consistent. It says on the top NK Guy. No idea who this person is, but I love their photography. But I feel like it's a collection of different photographers throughout the history of Burning Man. And yeah, a lot of the art really resonates with me. I like the portraits, and yeah, I just think it's a really beautiful book.
So you'd be there in the sands of your desert island, reminiscing about the sands of
the playa of Burning Man. I'd be making some sort of like photography effigy.
Nice.
Who needs the man when you can have a giant camera? Maybe I'd make an iPhone and burn it.
We're all on board with that.
Because you can't shoot an out-of-home campaign on an iPhone. I don't know how Apple do it.
No, I don't know. Very, very clever processing.
I know.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Know you've got to get off to another meeting. Do you want to quickly run through the website, the Instagram, and basically tell everyone where we can find out more about Equal Lens?
Sure. So I'm dyslexic. So equal and lens is spelled EQUAL, and then lens LENS, which is sometimes something I get asked, and I have to spell check myself all the time. And then we've got equallens.com, at Equal Lens on Instagram, at Equal Lens on Twitter. We've got an Equal Lens Facebook page, and then soon to be the Equal Lens podcast. So basically everything is Equal Lens.
Perfect. Well, I know you spelt it out, but years ago I wrote an ebook about live music photography, and I didn't run it through spell check, and I spelt lens wrong.
Well,
35 times in the book. Put an E on the
I'm not going to lie to you. When we did the 2 meters of separation competition recently, I spelt it the American way, not the UK way, which is okay because Equal Lens is worldwide photographers.
Right.
And that's how it spells in my brain. I'm Australian.
Perfect. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really
Thank
appreciate
you, Tom. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. Greg's my dad's name.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm sure he's an amazing guy. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Take care. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you'd like to know more about today's guest and read the show notes, head along to www.exposenegative.com. And you can find us on Instagram at exnegative. See you next week.